Hey everybody, we are on live. This is our first live stream of the 2023 NFL season. This is the preseason. Right now, as you can see, if I pull up the score like this, we have the Jets at 16, the Browns 7. The Browns are kicking off. Bill Carroll is our longtime friend and NFL draft specialist for Zennie62 Media, and you have a special guest too. I have my mom off camera, but she's got great things to say when she wants to. So she's looking at me like that. What? But introduce your friend for us, Bill.
And I've got right here Mark the Shark, as I know him, Mark Chisholm, who long time, like I said, literally from the time of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers existing, super fan, and a super fan also of the Rowdies. In fact, the super fan. If you go to see the Rowdies play down there, you will see his countenance, his figure, his manly visage painted there on the walls of one of the concourses. So enjoy that.
Too funny. Hey, so let's start. Mark, what do you think of the first half of today's contest?
So the first thing you notice, obviously, is the speed of the game is slower, right? Guys, you can see guys thinking a lot. Okay, I think this is my assignment. You see guys almost sure that I don't think, okay, I'm just going to go, right? You see a lot of that kind of stuff. You see people literally pushing each other out of it into position. We saw a couple of guys line up in the wrong spots. We saw, some illegal shifts, stuff you expect to see. This is before preseason games should be played because they've only been kept less than a week, really. So guys are literally introducing each other to themselves, like, "Oh, hi, I'm Mike." That's what it is. You don't know each other even, let alone rhythm. Yeah. So that's the first thing I noticed. The second thing I noticed is some of the rookies are really letting you know they're going to make some noise. Israel Banaconda is going to push for playing time for the Jets. I liked him a lot at Pitt. He's showing me a lot of things I like. Jason Brownlee, right, from Southern Miss, is going to make some noise for that third or fourth wide receiver spot. Mm-hmm. Obviously, Isaiah Moore is no longer playing for the Jets. In fact, he's playing on the other team, right? He now plays for the Browns, though he's not playing tonight. So that opened a vacuum in essence, and I would not be shocked if Jason Brownlee got involved in that competition to fill that void. On defense, there's a couple of players that I certainly liked. Some of the defensive backs of the Jets are all good. They've all looked good at various points. For the Browns, they got some things to figure out on defense. I saw a lot of guys like looking at each other like, "Oh, is that I should have been? You should have." Right? I saw some of that. So they seemed a little further away than the Jets on defense, just based on just simple execution stuff. Nobody's doing anything. There's no game plan for a game like this. Nobody's blitzing. Nobody's doing combination coverage. It's all like line up and play. Because half the guys don't really fully know the playbook yet anyway. So you can't get all exotic. I mean, they don't. There's a bunch of guys who won't be on the team in 2 or 3 weeks. So, yes, you're keeping it pretty simple. A couple of special teams plays, right? I saw a couple of good returns. I saw a kicker, Cade York, throw his body around a little bit. I mean, it wasn't how you would teach your kid to tackle, but he got the job done. I'm always impressed when kickers at least look like they want to get involved, and he did. He got in there and he, threw his body around, and that gets you a little butt pat. Hey, way to go, guy! Way not to just kind of cower. I mean, that essentially, if you don't cower as a kicker, you get respect. Zach Wilson looked calmer, right? Mm-hmm. It's still not efficient or quick or amazing, but he looked calmer.
Yep, yeah.
I saw him look calmer. I saw him throw a little more touch on some of his passes than I've seen in the past. But he still looks like a guy who's a year or two away from being whatever he's going to be. From the other side, I saw Kellen Mond fix some of his mechanical issues. He's still, we saw the pick. He still is a guy that doesn't get the ball as quickly as he'd like. He still takes the defense to the ball with his eyes. Mm-hmm. He's got to work on that if he's ever more than a second or third stringer. What about you, Zennie? Who stood out to you?
I want to hear from your guest before I talk.
Oh, what stood out to you, Mark the Shark, Mark Chisholm?
Mark the Shark, like Jaws, right?
You still there, Mark?
Yeah.
Oh, who stood out to you?
Just the kid from Pitt. He's fast, like Collinsworth noted, and I like he doesn't hesitate. I think he understands in the NFL. If you hesitate, you're going to go down in the backfield. I think depending on Brees Hall and his timetable to return, he'll definitely get some reps.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. I like Israel Bataconda. And, of course, he broke a Tony Dorsett record. If you break a Tony Dorsett record at Pitt, you're doing something. He went absolutely nuts in a couple of games and was one of my, speaking of Zennie62Media, one of my Saturday superlatives. If you check that out, he had a game for the ages, and they could do nothing with him. They had no answers for Israel Bataconda. If he sees it, he hits it, right? He's not a guy who's going to make a lot of people miss. He's not a guy that is going to find some hidden cutback lane and go 4 holes back. But if he's on the front side of the run and it's there, even if it's just a little crevice, he's in it and through it very quickly. Only 4.52. I say only. That's still more than fast enough. I mean, put it in perspective, Emmitt Smith was 4.63, so 4.52 is more than good enough. Sweetness, right? Walter Payton was 4.55, so more than fast enough. But the thing is his acceleration. He's at full speed on his second step, so that makes him feel faster than he actually timed. But yeah, I like him too, and I think he's going to see playing time. And with the current state of affairs for running backs, God forbid, some guy that they just drafted looks good if you are a higher priced player who's already in the team playing running back, because you could find yourself in a pickle.
Now, my observation about this is, as you know, Bill, I'm really in the scheme. First of all, there's also the moment. This is the NFL Hall of Fame game, and it's played in Canton, in Ohio, and we have the Cleveland Browns, right? So one would think that the coaching staff would put some priority on putting on a show and making sure they weren't showing up by the Jets. That's not this contest. And I think that's a big mistake. I understand over 40 years of watching the game, there's some people who like to approach it, well, it's just another game for us. But you really have to, when you're the home team essentially, and it's preseason and you haven't done well in a while, you really have to set a tone, even if it calls for calling plays that maybe you would normally call in a preseason situation. But that said, what the Browns came in and did, I thought was fascinating and showed a window into what to expect. And it seems a number of teams are doing this, like the Saints, specifically ball control passing of the Bill Walsh variety. But they still don't have their timing down. And but having said that, the Browns called a dizzying array of screens, jet sweeps, and in total, a good set of plays that indicated to me, hey, we're working on controlling the ball with a passing game and confusing you and then mixing it in with our run. The trouble is that they forgot the run, and they forgot to really use plays and formations to open holes for their running backs. My point is that a lot of teams haven't realized that, hey, you can use scheme to achieve your objective of yardage, and other teams really do get that. One of the other teams that gets that, and I think it's mainly because their offensive coordinator might be a little pissed off, is on the other side of the field, and that's the Jets. I as much as I agree with what Sean Payton said about Coach Hackett, I don't think it was appropriate for him to say it. For me to say it or you to say it is one thing, but for Sean Payton to get out there and basically blast the guy was not the greatest look. And it really, but you know what? I think he woke up a sleeping giant. I think at his best, Coach Hackett can be quite effective, and he understands space and speed. But he just has to think about it. And I think he goosed him. And so I think the Jets really came out with a mission like, hey, look, we're going to send everybody a message that we're to be reckoned with. We're not just an Aaron Rodgers team, that we're well coached, we get off the ball quickly, which I think is notable on offense, that we have a swarming defense, that we have talent. We put the talent in the right positions to make plays. And while it wasn't perfect, as you pointed out rightly, Bill,
Right.
I think they're quite on the way to doing that, So it's interesting. I wasn't high on the Jets at first, but now having seen how they think about football, I've changed my mind.
Well, when you're looking at a second-generation football coach, right?
My mom, what'd you say, Mom?
They have better players this year.
Oh, my mom says they have better players this year, the Jets.
Well, then last year, yes, your mother's right. They've upgraded at several positions. And I remember, obviously, the father, right? Paul Roger Hackett, right? Who coached at USC, coached at Pitt, coached with the Chiefs. At one point, he coached Joe Montana, right? When Joe Montana was the Chiefs, coached with the Dallas Cowboys, the 49ers, the Browns, the Jets, the Buccaneers, and the Raiders. And yes, he very much was a devotee of the 3 S's, right? Short, sharp, safe in the passing game.
Yep.
Was a graduate assistant to John McKay, and was 29 years old, right? 29 years old when McKay added him to the staff, and then stayed, was also under John Robinson until 1980. Then worked for Gambling Sam Rutigliano, right? For a year with the Browns.
Gambling Sam, I like that.
Yep, Gambling Sam Rutigliano, coached for him, and then
I'm gonna call it Carrollism.
Yes, and then he worked for the man himself, Bill Walsh, right? He spent 3 years, 83 to 85, with Bill Walsh. Got to work with Montana, then worked with Montana again. Then we went to Pitt for Mike Gottfried, and then got to work with Montana a second time when he went back to the NFL to work for Schottenheimer.
Yep, absolutely.
With the Chiefs. And even then, you saw by that point that accretion of that still devotion to the run game. You don't coach at USC without learning to love the run game. But that, as you said, ball control passing. The ball comes out in 2 seconds or less very often. You're putting the defense in a situation where somebody's open on every play, and even if it's just 4, 5, 6 yards, as you get taught as a very young quarterback, you won't go broke if you pick up loose change.
Yep.
So they always tell you, you don't have to don't make a play.
You say that again, you won't go broke.
You'll never go broke picking up loose change.
Loose change. That's true.
So, I mean, all of, especially the West Coast offense guys, but all of your ball control passing attacks are built around the quarterback taking the free money, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Your tight end or your running back, that little outlet, 3, 4, 5, 6 yard pass. If you do that 3 times in a row, you got first down.
Hey, to which I have a question for our guest, Mark. Mark, are you there?
Mark, still there? We may have lost Mark.
Oh, Mark was like, okay.
Yeah.
Anyway,
yep. No, Mark's still there. Go ahead, Mark. Go ahead, your question.
Hey, sir, what do you think of the Bucs in the, first of all, the post-Brady era? And riddle me this, because I haven't been able to follow up on it. Why did they fire Byron Leftwich, who I had the pleasure of meeting last year at the NFL meeting in Atlanta? Actually, the year before that. Yeah, I'm sorry. Time flies. Wow, this is not right. Lord, stop the time. I'm sorry. Mark?
Yeah, so that was the question Zennie was asking. What do you think about the Bucs in the post Thomas Edward Patrick Brady Jr. era? And he wanted to know why you thought that Byron Leftwich became the scapegoat.
Well, I mean, quarterback is, in today's NFL, the most important position on the team. I don't like it. I liked football in the 60s and 70s with the running backs off the line. But the Bucs are.
Hey, Bill, hold on a second. Bill, is he on? Hold his phone up closer to the.
Kyle Trask may be the answer, but
much better.
And we'll find out. I think Byron Leftwich became the scapegoat because of the Tom Brady effect. I certainly didn't like the play calling, but I didn't also put it all on the offensive coordinator. Tom Brady at age 43 had a lot of input into that offense, and he hindered the offense. Most NFL playbooks have anywhere between 15 and 20% of their plays with the quarterback on the move, naked boot, boot option, all these sorts of things. I'm not even talking about some of the things they do today in today's offense. I'm just talking about a static quarterback naked where he's got options in front of him. That entire part of the Tampa Bay playbook didn't exist because Tom Brady couldn't do it. So, yeah, I think Leftwich was unfairly scapegoated, and it was because Tom Brady has 7 Super Bowls. Do I think Byron Leftwich was without fault? Absolutely not. Conservative, never seemed to get in a rhythm. Didn't, I think, in my opinion, utilize all of his weapons correctly. But make no mistake, Tom Brady made that offense worse than it was, not Byron Leftwich.
You know, I had the impression that I had the pleasure of meeting him at the NFL Minority Coaches Symposium, and I was talking about, well, plays, and okay, I was talking about my evil offense. I thought he might like me. But at any rate, but in listening to him talk about the symposium without, divulging what he said exactly, I don't think that's fair because we weren't, on record, but he was leaving early. I got the impression that he sort of was there, and I'm just saying this just from very little information, but I got the impression that he believed he was the heir apparent. He didn't really need to be there as minority coach, and so he was sort of off someplace else. Now, I'm happy to be wrong, but I'm wondering if maybe something along the lines between, as they say, here and there, something transpired where he gave everybody the impression that he was okay for the next person up, and maybe did some things that indicated that, and maybe he didn't. Maybe he upset some people. I'm just guessing. I don't know. You have any insight on that, Mark?
I'm not sure if you heard the question, Mark.
I did not.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
so he was talking about how he had run into Coach at a conference, and at one point, I guess there was a perception that he was seen as the heir apparent and didn't maybe have to do or need to do certain things that other coaches may have thought they had to do or needed to do, and maybe even rub some people the wrong way, in addition to, as you said, the playbook being limited to some extent because of Brady's limitations, and then also to some extent the play callers and the coaches' limitations because of maybe not being a little risk averse. But he's wondering if you might have heard anything that made you think that maybe Leftwich might have somehow rubbed someone the long way or wrong way, or given someone the wrong impression, or left a bad taste in someone's mouth.
I've never heard anything like that. I think Coach Bowles may have just felt after a year plus of Leftwich and Brady, I think maybe he just needed a change of direction. But to answer the question directly, I have not heard anything about Coach Leftwich offending anyone or stepping out of line. No, nothing on the field, in the locker room, off the field. No. I think Coach Bowles probably just felt like the offense deserved better. And I think it was a little surprising that he didn't want to see what Leftwich could do without Brady.
Yeah.
And I mean that in a positive way, with a quarterback that can move. But yeah, I didn't hear anything like that.
Oh, by the way, folks, the Browns just scored. They found a running game. Wow. It's 16-13. Now we got a game. Hey, Mark and Bill, something else about that. I'd like to chime in. What I liked about Tom Brady paired with Byron Leftwich is they corrected what I argue is one of the most badly designed offenses in modern NFL history, and that's Bruce Arians' risk it, no biscuit, we don't care about timing, but we pretend like we do passing offense. And you look at the plays, and if you actually go through the playbook, quarterback drop back isn't properly timed with the receivers, and it's not really far removed from the Dallas Cowboys playbook of 1968, which writes, in terms of the quarterback drop back, set strong. In other words, it's not like, number of steps. It's right, set strong. What does that mean, right? And you think about that then as a kid, you're like, oh yeah, they knew what they were doing. But then of course Bill Walsh came along and blew all that away, right? And it really made us think differently about how the passing game should be constructed, and not just in fairness. There were a number of people who contributed to that ideology of the time. The air raid people. Then of course there are people who are less known, like Doug Scoville and others, right? But my point is, when you look at what Bruce Arians drew up, it was, hey, I am interested in throwing a lot of yards, but I really am not so much concerned about the safety of my quarterback or controlling the ball. Ball control, what's that? When Tom Brady came in, he quickly realized that the offense that Jameis Winston played in was the responsibility for his interceptions, not Jameis Winston. And he said, I'm not going to run these plays, and didn't. Whereas Jameis' mentality was basically to make them happy, and he's going to do what they tell him to do. And I know personally he's like that as a person. Whereas Taysom Hill, when he got to the Saints, was telling him, hey, look, man, you don't have to accept everything they give you. You can question it. But Tom Brady didn't come from that cloth. And plus, he had the rings. So he could talk it and walk it. And they had to talk and walk with him, and they got a Super Bowl championship the first year. But to me, they didn't really properly categorically estimate and what I say put into a library and put to bed what they were doing for the future. So it's like, hey, you had these great things, but are you going to use them again? Nope. It's in the trash heap. I think that's really too bad. I didn't mean to shut everybody up.
Well, so I guess what Zennie is doing is comparing and contrasting the offense that Brady essentially carried packaged inside of him that eventually became much of the Buccaneers offense with Bruce Arians' offense that he favored, which essentially was built around a quarterback who was hanging in the pocket, taking hits if he had to drive the ball down the field so that you could get these brilliant deep shots, glance routes and, deep seam shots and, deep crossers and wasp routes and all this kind of stuff off, even against blitzes and things like that. In fact, especially against blitzes. In fact, where you get your big plays, right? You're hoping they'll blitz you so you can hang in there as they're hitting you in the teeth. You throw the ball deep down the field, in the style of, guys like Roman Gabriel or later guys like Ben Roethlisberger or even a guy like Kurt Warner. Yeah. And I guess that's what he's asking. One, do you feel like that was something that could only someone like Tom Brady could do because he could point to all the rings, and a guy like Jameis couldn't do because he doesn't have that kind of gravitas? And then do you feel like that's something that contributed directly maybe to the Tampa Bay offense? I mean, obviously you get Tom Brady, but you also get Tom Brady's offensive acumen and ability to change the offense.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Mark?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was the end of the line. I think there were a lot of factors. I think Tom Brady's personal life, he would probably deny it, but it certainly was affecting him.
Good point.
Tom Brady was nothing if not the champion of beating everyone with his brain and not necessarily, obviously, we know his body or even his arm, even though he had a nice arm. I think he was distracted. I think he probably had set a precedent his first year there when Bruce Arians was still there of where he wanted plays implemented. If you remember, I think the Bucs started with Brady. I believe they started 2-3 in the first 5 games Tom Brady started.
Yep.
And I think there was probably a come to Jesus where Brady said, we're going to start doing things my way. And then Arians leaves. Coach Bowles, I think, has a sea change in philosophy, overall game management philosophy. Everybody knows risk it, no biscuit is Bruce Arians' mantra. And Todd Bowles, and you touched on this, Bill, is risk averse. And to be frank, I love Coach Bowles. I love the way he runs defenses. I think he is a master at defensive coordinating. But I think you can't coach that way in the NFL as a head coach anymore. And so that led into probably Coach Leftwich's decisions, which probably didn't sit well with Brady. So it was probably a turmoil probably every game week. And then it was compounded. Yeah, Brady, to answer your question, Brady had a lot of input, but then it's compounded by the inevitable deterioration of Tom Brady's, physical skills. Yeah. And like I said, you can't run an offense in the NFL with a statue. It can't be done anymore. Why do you think we see so many quarterbacks in the NFL that are mobile, that can do everything? And so it was just, I think it was sort of an inevitable culmination of
Mark, you just stepped in it, man. Mark, you just stepped in it. You know why? You hear me?
I think we're all waiting to hear what you have to say there, Zennie. Why was that something was a step-in moment?
I am dying to hear his view and your view too, since we're talking about Derek Carr in the vein of the statue. Because Derek Carr can run, but he's not known for running.
Well, I mean, he's a better athlete than most people realize. I guess the first thing I'd say about Derek Carr. He moves well enough, and though Davante Adams likes to say,
I have to just Chuck Howley, one of my favorite Cowboys.
Yeah, well, I'm very happy to see him finally get in. Very happy to see, unfortunately, posthumously, Kenny Anderson get in, and Joe Klecko, shockingly, finally getting in as late as he's getting in. But I'm glad to see it happen.
But as a fan of the 5-time Super Bowl, 5-time NFC champion, I was trying to channel my inner Drew Brees, inner Drew Pearson. Sorry about that. Yeah. But I digress. I'm a big fan of the flex defense, as you know, Bill. So I had to get that in there. Anyway, you were saying, Bill.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the whole thing, is that while Derek Carr is not going to ever be confused with, a guy like Lamar Jackson or Michael Vick, he's a good athlete. He moves quite well. He can run when he has to, and was a pretty darn good basketball player. Though Davante Adams always tries to bring him down a peg, because Davante Adams is a great basketball player. And they play still on a regular basis, even though they aren't teammates anymore. They still meet and play a lot. But Derek Carr's a good athlete, and he's what is the norm now, is your quarterback being able to really move well. And you've got some guys who are really high-end athletes. Desmond Ridder is a 4.49 guy. Tannehill was a punter and a wide receiver at Texas A&M, in addition to playing quarterback. So you're seeing this group, that are in the league the last couple of years, can almost all of them move. There's a few sort of throwback, or whatever we call it, guys who aren't very athletic, but as the Matt Ryans and the Tom Bradys and the Phillip Rivers and that group all leaves the league, the guys that are backfilling for them, and I mean, look at the current quarterback that they have now in San Diego, a fantastic athlete. I mean, a lot of defenders have looked at this guy and misjudged his athletic ability and ended up not being able to bring him down because of it, because they took completely the wrong angle. He runs just under 4.6. Yeah. He's basically he and Josh Allen are almost the same guy athletically. They're both terrific. Even though they're giant white guys, they're fantastically athletic.
Bill, I'm still salty that we couldn't beat him in Cal.
Well, he was hard to beat. Justin Herbert was hard to beat.
It was disgusting. What do you think? Say, Mark. What say you?
So I guess he was asking what your opinion about the new trend And I guess even about the quarterbacks you guys have now in Tampa Bay.
Bill, the biggest question I have for Mark is this. Is he, as a Bucs fan, afraid of Derek Carr under the Pete Carmichael coach Saints offense?
That's an interesting question. So I guess he's asking, are you, as a Tampa Bay Bucs fan, concerned or frightened or scared or whatever about facing a Carmichael-led offense with Derek Carr at quarterback for the Saints?
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Bill. Derek Carr is athletic enough. He is, again, if we go over the last 15 years, they continually become even backups, even the journeyman backups like Jacoby Brissett, Taylor Heineke. These guys can move. I mean, they're not, the most mobile, but the days of the statue, and I like the names you named, perfect, they're gone. They don't exist anymore. Defenses are too good. They're too athletic. They're too hard to block not to have a quarterback that can take care of himself. Derek Carr is fine. I have no problem with Derek Carr. I think the Saints will probably win the division. I think Carmichael leading Derek Carr will be fine. I mean, let's face it, Carmichael's basically a carbon copy disciple of Sean Payton. I believe he's been with the Saints longer than any other coach, I believe, in their history, actually, I think. I'd have to look that up because I think he preceded Sean Payton, and Payton was with New Orleans for 15 years, minus the year he was suspended. And to your point, yeah, I think all quarterbacks now have to be mobile. And if he's asking if I think the Saints are going to win the division, highly likely. With the Bucs talking about their quarterback situation, Baker Mayfield is certainly not as athletic as he thinks he is, and that gets him into trouble. That's usually when the trouble starts with Baker, is when he thinks he can make plays on the move, and he gets run down, he fumbles, which, by the way, I think he's in the top 5 in fumbles lost over his career. But he's also can make plays when he can get out of the pocket, and it's a structured play, which, again, they'll have those. Dave Canales will have plays with Baker doing that. Unfortunately, he might not even win the starting job. A lot of scuttlebutt out of the early training camp reviews are Kyle Trask has gained a lot, mainly on his accuracy. Kyle Trask is a more accurate quarterback than Baker Mayfield. While Kyle Trask is not very mobile, he's gained rave reviews on. He's lost a few pounds coming into camp, and he is more mobile than, say, his Florida days. I think he's probably going to have to learn how to use his limited mobility to stay out of trouble, and, to be honest, just to get rid of the ball when he needs to.
On that matter too, I think Baker has a windup that apparently, I don't understand why no coach has corrected. It is too long. He has that old Roger Staubach type of windup that he gets into, and it's a bad habit. Occasionally he doesn't do it, but when he's out of the scheme of the play calls for a 3-step drop, and maybe receiver's not available, and then he has to take an extra step, and suddenly it's on him. It's like he forgets, and he gets into this windup, and that long windup produces those interceptions. But it's amazing that no coach has actually either no coach has coached him out of it, or they tried and he doesn't, remember his coaching. I don't know which is which.
Well, it's probably a combination. I mean, I think coaches work on certain things until they figure it's not worth working on it. And if a guy's having success, I mean, the guy wins a Heisman, maybe you say, okay, well, maybe I don't need to worry about this. So, we're talking about a guy who was one of those self-made or whatever, a guy who was, North Texas State was interested in a few other preferred walk-on and some partial scholarship offers, a lot of FCS offers, and a few non-Power 5 scholarship offers, who decided, no, I'm going to Texas Tech and I'm going to walk on, works on some things essentially on his own because he's a scout teamer. So it's not like he's getting, coached up that much because he's like a 4th or 5th stringer initially. and he just keeps working, and a couple of guys get hurt, and before you know it, he's starting, and he's in the running for Big 12 Newcomer of the Year. And then, of course, some Patrick LeVon Mahomes II shows up, and he has to pack up his things and, take his dance moves a little bit further west, finds way to Oklahoma, sits for a year, and then he bursts out, and obviously has a year for the ages in terms of passing efficiency. He's a maximum effort thrower, partially because, body type wise, he's not the biggest cat in the world. So when you are a maximum effort thrower, very often you're using everything, right? You're using your body weight, you're using your legs, using your trunk, you're using your arm. And so you do see guys sometimes, especially in stress situations, in situations where they are having to be creative and things like that, whatever they've done since they were 7 or 8 years old overtakes what they've been working on the past couple of years. It's just the math. Your body remembers, especially under stress, when you're in adrenaline's coursing, remembers the thing it's more natural doing as opposed to the thing you've been trying to fix.
Oh, if I may, real quick, Don Coryell.
Yes, well, obviously, we're all happy to see him finally make it as well.
Yeah, definitely, 100. Hey, another question for you both regarding the Saints. But this is not so much a question, it's a comment. As a longtime Raiders fan, I went from, my issue with Derek Carr, Bill and Mark, is that Derek has always been handed the keys. When he came to the Raiders, there was no competition between he and Matt McGloin. There was, there was one game, and I liked McGloin better for a period, and Raider fans hated that I pointed this out because I thought that he was a better technician of the offense than Derek Carr. But Carr was the fan favorite because, hey, local guy, Fresno State, all the other off the field.
Right, and just way more talented than a guy like McGloin.
But I like the fact that Matt paid attention to such things as lining up in the formation, getting the ball, getting the plays off on time, just the little things. I felt that there should have been a competition. I wasn't against Derek because he's Derek. I was against handing him the keys when here's a second-round pick, and I personally hadn't seen enough for me to think, okay, this guy's going to be plug and play and just give it to him and forget McGloin. I really believe that we needed a competition. So he won out the second year. Well, game 8 of the first year. Then they went into the second year with him, and he grew into the offense.
Yep.
But it got to a point where in Derek Carr's best years were 2016 under Bill Musgrave, and then the second year of the John Gruden era, which is 2019, statistically. Offenses of similar design. And that's when he was at his best in a true Bill Walsh-style ball control passing offense. But even then, he had this annoying knack, and this is what I'm getting at, Bill and Mark, to make the play that was off statistical books. Now, what do I mean? I mean, look, you can look at his stats for the game and think, okay, he threw one or he threw 2 interceptions. But then when you start looking at the game and when the interceptions occurred, you realize they were at very critical times. Very critical times. It wasn't like he would throw 3 interceptions or even 4 and still win the game, as some quarterbacks, a number of quarterbacks are actually done. No. He had this knack of making that play. And that's why Derek Carr is like, he's Mr. Raider, but he's not, for a number of Raider fans, the Mr. Raider. That will always be Ken Stabler, to a large extent, to a lesser extent, Rich Gannon, because of how he came in. But, and then, of course, there's Jeff Hostetler. But my point is, right, okay, but in terms of being that guy as Mr. Raider, he's only there because they handed him the keys. And so my concern is, does he have what it takes to come in under pressure and really perform well and not be concerned if, oh hey, maybe he gets benched or something. What happens if it happens this time? Because he didn't expect it in Oakland. I mean, with I'm sorry, not in Oakland, but he didn't expect it with Las Vegas. And I'll mention that with Oakland, his last game against Jacksonville was not bad. It was not good, is what I meant to say. But what was worse is how the fans treated him. The fans actually threw things at him. Okay? They actually threw things at him his final game in Oakland, which is horrible.
Yes.
They're not going to do that in the Saints, in New Orleans. But my point is, there is a lot mentally there I'm concerned about. He's still got a lot to prove. He's angry with the Raiders. And I think once he makes that mistake, that'll be the test. Can he come back from that? Will it weigh on him because he's thinking more about winning than football? All right? Because I think he is. And if that's the case, they're not going to have the season that a number of people expect them to have, even with their defense. And I'm happy to be wrong. I can't see it though. I'm waiting. What do you guys think?
So I think the question mark was in terms of the playing style.
I heard all of it.
Oh, you heard it. Okay, cool.
And so, I mean, you and I, Bill, have talked a lot about Derek Carr, a lot.
For years.
And
yes.
I feel like Zennie and I are more on the same page. You, I think, have always been a little higher on him than I have.
Correct.
I agree with Zennie in the sense that he's played for a long time. He has played efficient football. He is the king of efficiency. He has sparks of brilliance. I think the critics of Derek Carr don't see those sparks of brilliance. But to Zennie's point and to my point, can you name one defining moment that Derek Carr has created as a winner? I can't.
I can. Just one. I was there. It was the October 2017. It's on my YouTube channel here. Kansas City Thursday night football game where Carr brought us back in the fourth quarter for I have to say, Mark and Bill, it was one of the most exciting moments of football I ever had. And I just lost it in the West Side Club. I mean, it was just, the place was electric. It was like a playoff game, you know? The Raiders were in their all white from the 1967 AFL Championship. And Derek Carr was the kind of Derek Carr we wanted to see. He made the right passes. He played determined. He took the crowd's energy. He made it his own. He transferred the offense. He executed the plays properly, and they came out victorious in the end. And the place went nuts. It was a beautiful. It was one of those moments that when I think about the Raiders being gone, I think, wow, we really blew it. No, I didn't, but you know. But I do hear. But having said that, and to piggyback on what you're saying, Mark, there aren't a lot of those moments. You know, there are some. There are people so he's had more fourth quarter comebacks than fine. But the whole trouble is, wait a minute, why did you have to come back? Part of it's the defense, but the other part.
I think the defense has never been ranked higher than number 25 in the league in his time there, or something like that. That's part of it. But
yeah, but the other only part, one, yeah.
Right, but here's the other part. If I may, a lot of people like to trot that out, but I will counter you with, some of those situations were created by Derek's own errors.
Oh, I'm not disputing that. I'm saying that still, even some of the great quarterbacks have been bailed out by their defenses. Tom Brady's been bailed out by his defense in big games.
Yes.
Terry Bradshaw made a career of being bailed out by his defense. And I say that as a lifelong Steelers fan that he would tell you there were lots of times he got bailed out by his defense. He could play the way he did because he knew his defense would hold up. He could take risks. When you're Derek Carr, you have to be perfect in those situations because if your defense isn't going to hold up. If the other team gets the ball on the wrong side of the 50, it's going to be points, at least a field goal, and quite possibly a touchdown. So you have to be more cautious, more careful.
Yeah, I quite agree. Hey, gentlemen.
Well, let's put it on you, Bill. You're a Derek Carr guy.
I'm a Derek Carr guy.
He's going to have I would say, a middle of the pack defense, maybe slightly better.
Maybe.
His offensive line is certainly going to be better. Not way better, but it's
better.
Better.
Right, correct.
So as a self-professed Derek Carr guy, should you have pretty high expectations?
My preseason projections are 3,428 yards passing, 29 touchdowns, and 11 interceptions.
Okay.
My expectations for Derek is not statistically based. I think he'll do well, but there's something in me that feels like come after about the 7th game, once they get a book on what the Saints do, that he may struggle. Now, here's why I say that. I love that the Saints are paying attention to installing a ball control passing offense this year with he and Jameis. But what I'm feeling is just simply intangible. I think it's because there's so many new players. People like to say, they use the term pieces, new players. And the question is, how well will Derek Carr take to Pete Carmichael's, coaching when in the heat of battle, right? He didn't do well with Josh McDaniel. He didn't like being hollered at in that way. He liked being hollered at in the way that John Gruden presented, because John was different. John was cerebral. He would say, concept. You have to cut. That's how he is.
Right.
So those are the intangibles that I wonder. But hey, I'm wondering, it's getting close to 10:45, and we got a day tomorrow. So maybe we can I'd love to do this again. This is fun.
Sure. And then Zennie, at some point in the next couple of days, I want to get a chance to talk about the new NFLPA chief and what that might mean for the NFLPA, especially as we're seeing the collusion around the running back position and everyone getting the memo about we do not pay running backs. So I definitely would like to talk about that sometime in the next couple of days too.
Well, how about Sunday?
Yes. Sunday.
Okay, yeah, cool. Mark, you're welcome to join us.
So, Mark, if you're available.
I'm not sure that I will be, but thank you, Zennie, for having me on. I do appreciate it.
Yeah, got it. You can come on back. Got it, definitely. All right, folks. I'm gonna. You don't have to leave.
Thank you, Mark.
Hey, thanks, Mark. I'm gonna end the broadcast right here, folks. Subscribe to Zennie62. Don't go anywhere, Bill. Bookmark OaklandNewsNowBlog.com. That ends this broadcast.